The stars had not seen peace in a long time. For many years, the Calrec Dominion moved through the galaxy, crushing world after world. They were feared by all. Planets surrendered before a single shot was fired. Their fleet was large, their weapons advanced, and their soldiers cold and silent. Once they came, there was no escape. No power could stop them. They were called the End of Light, in 100 different languages. On the edge of the galaxy, the planet Relan was the latest to fall. Smoke rose from its cities. Its leaders had begged for peace, but the Calrec general gave no reply. He did not speak during war, he only conquered. Now the Calrec fleet turned toward the next star system. It was a quiet place with only a few small colonies and a single planet that wasn't even part of the Galactic Council, Earth. No one paid attention to Earth. It had no major allies. It had not sent ambassadors, and it had stayed quiet during the long galactic wars. The Calrec believed it would be just another easy target. A scout ship was sent ahead to monitor Earth's defenses. The small vessel drifted close to the blue planet and picked up only a few signals, mostly old satellites and basic tech. The scout pilot laughed. There was nothing to worry about. The Calrec fleet set a course to take Earth in one clean strike. But something strange happened next. The scout ship never reported back. It simply vanished. No explosion, no signal, nothing. The command ship waited. Hours passed. Still nothing. Then a second scout was sent. This one managed to approach low orbit, but before it could finish scanning, a beam of energy hit it from above. The ship was gone in seconds. The crew was vaporized. There was no trace left behind. The fleet paused. This had never happened before. The Calrec general ordered caution. 3 destroyers were sent to investigate the area where the scouts vanished. They entered orbit, and that's when they saw it. A single warship. It hovered silently above Earth's atmosphere. It wasn't large, it wasn't part of any known fleet, but it looked different. The hull was dark and smooth, and strange symbols glowed along the sides. It gave off no regular signals. It didn't even appear on their radar systems until they were right on top of it. The Calrec ships locked weapons on the unknown vessel. They fired, but the warship didn't move. Instead, it responded with one precise blast. One destroyer exploded instantly. The others tried to retreat, but before they could turn, the warship fired again. 2 more explosions. 3 Calrec destroyers wiped out in seconds. The fleet panicked. Ships turned. Orders were shouted. The general ordered the main fleet to prepare for battle. And still, the lone warship stayed still like a shadow over the planet. The Calrec had faced thousands of warships over the years. But this one was different. It had no name, no flag. It was human, and it had drawn the line. The Calrec Dominion had never known fear, until now. The fleet hovered near the edge of Earth's system, unsure of what to do. Reports came in, but they were all the same. A single human warship had destroyed 3 of their destroyers in seconds. No warning, no delay. The Calrec general stood in silence on the command bridge, staring at the screen. The image of the human ship floated like a ghost, motionless, almost peaceful in appearance. But its silence was a threat. For years, Earth had said nothing while the galaxy changed. It had not joined the Galactic Council. It had not made deals or sent diplomats. It was a mystery. Some believed Earth was weak. Others believed it had given up. They were wrong. Earth had been watching. On Earth, in a hidden military command base deep beneath the ground, a quiet alarm echoed through the halls. Officers moved quickly but calmly. They weren't surprised. The moment Earth's outer satellites picked up the Calrec fleet, the response plan had started. In the control room, a man stood watching a screen that displayed the enemy fleet's position. His name wasn't important. No rank was given. He simply nodded and a soft command was spoken. Activate Vigilant 1. That was the name of the warship above the planet. Vigilant 1. Not a fleet, not a formation, just one ship. One answer. The warship was Earth's final card. It had been built in silence in orbit around Earth's dark side, hidden from satellites and scanners. Every piece of its design came from centuries of Earth's wars, lessons written in blood. The Calrec didn't know that Earth had been preparing for something like this. For decades, Earth remained quiet, not because it feared war, but because it was learning how to end one instantly. Now the Calrec had forced their hand. Back in the Calrec command ship, arguments broke out. Some demanded full invasion, others called for retreat. The general said nothing. He stared at the warship. His instincts told him this was not a normal enemy. This was not another weak species pretending to be strong. The general remembered something once said by an old rival, long before the Calrec took over his world. Humans may be quiet, but they are the storm after silence. He didn't believe it then. Now he wasn't so sure. Suddenly the warship moved. Just a little. But to the Calrec it was like thunder cracking across the void. It didn't aim weapons. It didn't send a warning. It simply shifted, as if it had decided something. Then, without a single sound, the human warship vanished. No warp trail, no signal burst. Nothing. One moment it was there, and the next, gone. The Calrec were stunned, but that wasn't the worst part. A second later, alarms blared across the entire Calrec fleet. The warship wasn't gone. It was behind them. Right behind, the command ship. No one knew how it moved that fast, no one could explain it. The Calrec scrambled. Weapons were armed, shields raised, but the human ship didn't fire. It just sat there. Then a message came through. One sentence, 4 words. "You've crossed the line." Every ship in the Calrec fleet received it. The same message. No voice, just text. No threats, no diplomacy. Only truth. The Calrec general stepped back from the screen. For the first time in his life, he felt unsure. His fleet had faced empires. It had turned proud warriors into ashes. It had never been stopped. Until now. Until Earth. The Calrec Dominion had over 1,000 warships orbiting near Earth's system. From heavy cruisers to assault frigates, the fleet stretched across space like a wall of steel. Any species would have surrendered by now. Most never dared to stand, against even 1/3 of the Calrec force. But Earth hadn't surrendered. Instead, it sent one warship, just one. Vigilant One now hovered behind the Calrec command ship. It wasn't large compared to the enemy dreadnoughts. It had no visible weapons. Its hull reflected nothing. But its presence filled every Calrec officer with a pressure they couldn't explain. The Calrec general stood frozen. He wanted to order an attack, but no one moved. His fleet officers stared at their controls, unsure if their fingers should press the buttons that might start a war they couldn't win. And still, the human warship remained quiet. Then it sent another message. This one was longer. "Your reign ends here. Earth does not seek conquest, only peace. But if threatened, we will defend ourselves completely. Simple, cold, final." Still, the Calrec didn't move. They hadn't come this far to back down. So the general gave the order. "All ships fire." The command echoed through the fleet. Thousands of cannons and torpedoes charged. Beams locked onto Vigilant One. The sky lit up with energy. They fired. The space between the fleets turned white with blasts, and when the light faded, Vigilant One was still there. Untouched. Not even scratched. The Calrec systems were in chaos. Sensors couldn't register what just happened. Did the warship absorb the attack? Did it bend space? Or was it using some unknown form of shield? Before anyone could answer, the human ship moved again, slowly. It rose above the command ship, then dove straight down. The Calrec dreadnought turned its shields forward, trying to block the impact. But it didn't matter. Vigilant One passed through the energy field like it wasn't even there. It didn't fire a weapon. Instead, it dropped a pulse, a small silver orb. The orb stuck to the side of the Calrec ship like a bug. 3 seconds. Later, the command ship lost all power. Engines died. Weapons went dark. Lights flickered. In the darkened bridge, the Calrec general screamed at his engineers, "Restart! Reroute power!" But it was useless. One orb, one pulse, one ship. That was all it took. Other ships in the fleet tried to retreat, but the warship was already in motion again, fast, smooth, precise. It didn't fire like normal ships. It didn't blast waves of destruction. It chose targets, one by one. With each move, another ship was disabled, not destroyed, disarmed. Earth wasn't sending a message of terror. It was showing control. Inside Vigilant 1, the human crew monitored every ship, every engine, every energy fluctuation. The ship's AI calculated each movement before the Calrec captains even gave orders. Their tactics, once feared, looked clumsy against Earth's silent response. Back on Earth, the command center watched calmly. No celebration, no fear. Just confirmation. Earth had drawn the line and was now holding it. By the end of the hour, more than 400 Calrec warships were floating powerless. And the rest? They turned. Without orders, without signals, hundreds of Calrec ships began retreating. Some jumped out of the system. Others drifted far, too afraid to act. The Calrec general stood in silence, watching his empire break apart. And Vigilant 1 never said another word. It simply hovered, watching, letting them choose. Far from the battle, deep in the archives of forgotten worlds, there were old warnings, ancient messages carved in stone, lost in data ruins or whispered in dark corners of space stations. They all spoke of a species that once walked quietly among the stars, until it stopped. They spoke of humans. But over time, the galaxy forgot. The Galactic Council had dismissed Earth as unimportant. The Calrec saw it as easy prey. No one remembered the last time Earth had been involved in galactic affairs. No wars, no alliances, no claims, just silence. And now, the galaxy was being reminded, Earth's silence was not weakness. It was preparation. Inside the Calrec command ship, still floating dead in space, the general sat alone in the dark. His fleet was scattered, his command crew paralyzed. He had lived his life as a conqueror. No opponent had ever stood against him for more than a few days until today. He watched the image of the human warship on his dim console screen. How? Why? Who were these people? And more importantly, what had Earth become in all those years of silence? On a secure frequency, a message was sent out by the human ship. Not to the Calrec fleet, not to any enemy, but to the entire galaxy. Earth does not seek to rule. We do not seek revenge. But if attacked, we will defend ourselves, with the full strength of our people, our knowledge, and our will. To issue. Message repeated in every major language across known space. It wasn't just a warning, it was a reintroduction. The galaxy paused. Entire governments froze transmissions. Leaders leaned in closer to their screens. Everyone remembered the old name. Earth, humanity, the forgotten species, and now everyone wanted to know, what had Earth been doing all this time? The truth? Earth had never stopped preparing. When other species built fleets, Earth built invisibility. When others made faster engines, Earth made silent jump drives. When others trained soldiers, Earth trained defense AIs that could predict battle outcomes before the first shot was fired. They had studied every past war, every failure, every mistake. And when they finished learning, they did the one thing no one expected. They vanished from galactic politics, not to hide, to evolve. Back aboard, Vigilant 1, the human captain finally spoke. Scan the remaining ships. Offer retreat. Do not destroy unless forced. The crew obeyed. The warship moved like a ghost across space, scanning the damaged Calrec vessels. Many were still trying to power up. Others had already begun jumping away. No chase, no taunt, no show of dominance, just control. Humanity didn't want more enemies, but they were making one thing very clear: never mistake silence for surrender. Aboard a nearby Calrec carrier, A young officer looked at the screen and whispered, "They didn't destroy us. They chose not to." And that was the most terrifying part. The Calrec weren't defeated by numbers. They were defeated by one ship, one planet, one people who had waited long enough. The galaxy was changing. In the coming days, every starfaring species would talk about Earth. Some would fear, others would want peace. But none would ignore them again. And above the quiet blue planet, Vigilant One turned slowly, its task complete. But Earth knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy had crossed a line. Now, Earth was watching. Long before the Calrec Dominion rose to power, long before the Galactic Council was formed, there were wars. Old wars, forgotten by most species, erased from records, buried in ash. But some ancient minds remembered. In the cold corners of the galaxy, on derelict moons and inside deep AI cores, fragments of the past remained. They all told the same story of a time when humanity was not silent. Humanity had once brought fire to the stars, not for conquest, but for survival. Back then, humans were a new species in the galaxy. They had no allies, no colonies, but they had one thing others didn't expect: persistence. When their first colony was attacked, they didn't beg for help. They rebuilt. When alien warlords invaded Earth's orbit, they didn't surrender. They resisted until the invaders burned out. And when a coalition of 5 empires tried to erase humanity from history, Earth responded with something no one had ever seen before: a defense fleet that didn't follow normal logic. Their ships were smaller, faster. Their weapons were strange, bending energy in ways that defied sensors. But most terrifying of all was their strategy. Humans didn't fight like the others. They adapted. Each battle was a lesson. Each loss turned into a new tactic. Each victory made them harder to stop. The war didn't last long. Not because humanity was stronger, but because the empires gave up. They called for peace. They erased their records of the war. They passed laws forbidding the mention of Earth. And humanity? They went quiet again, not out of fear, out of choice. Now, centuries later, the galaxy was finally seeing the truth. Earth wasn't weak. It had simply stepped back to make sure it would never be caught off guard again. Inside the Calrec High command chamber, deep within their homeworld, a secret meeting took place. Word of the defeat had reached them. Many argued it couldn't be true. "One ship?" they shouted. "How can one ship do this?" But a few of the older strategists didn't speak. They had seen fragments, scans, weapon trails, and one whispered, "This isn't the first time." He pulled out a rusted piece of metal. It was a fragment of a ship, found on a long-abandoned world. Human letters still burned into the plating. "We do not start wars. We end them." The council chamber went silent. Across the galaxy, others began looking through their oldest records. Pieces of lost history were restored, warnings retranslated. One phrase repeated again and again: "If Earth rises, prepare for judgment." But humans weren't looking to judge. They were simply making sure no one would try again. Back on Earth, Vigilant One returned to high orbit. It didn't land. It didn't power down. It simply waited. The world below remained peaceful. Cities untouched. Skies calm. But beneath the surface, Earth's defense system was fully active. This was not a one-time act. This was the first step. A message, a memory reborn. And in the quiet heart of a galaxy still trembling, everyone now asked the same question: what else has Earth been hiding? The Calrec fleet never returned to Earth. Not that day. Not the next. Not ever. What was once an unstoppable force had now become cautious, unsure, scattered. The Calrec Dominion, once feared across the stars, had been broken, not by war, but by a single line drawn in silence. Other species watched carefully. From the icy halls of the Orthanic worlds to the firelit skies of Vulan space, the galaxy held its breath. Old alliances grew quiet. Empires paused expansion. Even the Galactic Council, so used to ignoring Earth, called an emergency assembly. They had questions. Questions no one could answer. How powerful was Earth truly? How many ships like Vigilant? One did it possess? And why had humans stayed hidden for so long? On Earth, the leaders did not celebrate. There were no public parades, no broadcasted speeches. In the control room buried beneath the surface, the human captain of Vigilant One stood still, staring at the map of nearby systems. He spoke only one sentence. Let them decide what kind of galaxy they want to live in now. The meaning was clear. Earth would not rule, but neither would it stay silent any longer. Humanity had returned, and their presence changed everything. The Galactic Council was the first to respond. A neutral ambassador sent a message to Earth, requesting peaceful dialogue. The message was humble, respectful, and carried none of the arrogance Earth had once endured. The humans responded, briefly. We are willing to listen. That's all it said, and that was enough to shake the foundations of the Council. For the first time in generations, the balance of power was not between the great empires, but between the galaxy and a planet it had once ignored. The Calrec tried to cover up their defeat. Propaganda networks denied what had happened. They claimed the ship was an illusion, a trick, a temporary success. But the truth was too big to hide. Footage leaked, sensor data shared. Dozens of independent traders and captains had seen it for themselves. Stories spread fast. The legend of the single human warship, the ship that faced 1,000, was told in bars, ports, and backwater outposts. Some mocked it, others feared it. But deep inside, even the doubters wondered if it was true. And the most important ones, the strategists, the admirals, the warlords, believed it completely, because they saw what was coming. Earth had changed the rules. No longer would war be the path to domination. Now every empire had to ask, would Earth allow it? The balance of the galaxy had shifted, not because Earth claimed power, but because it had proven it didn't need permission to stop those who abused theirs. Back in Earth's orbit, Vigilant One entered a holding pattern. Satellites adjusted. Signal drones were launched. Quietly, without ceremony, Earth's defensive systems expanded into deeper space. It wasn't an invasion. It was a reminder. Earth would not watch another world fall to tyranny. Not again. Not like the others. The silence was over, and the galaxy would have to adapt. Across the stars, the name Earth began to echo again, spoken in hushed tones, printed in emergency reports, whispered by commanders who once laughed at the thought of humans resisting. But they weren't laughing anymore. They were remembering. The old records were pulled from deep archives. War simulations once dismissed were now studied closely. Histories scrubbed clean of Earth's early power were now retranslated, re-examined. The truth was clear. Humanity had never stopped being dangerous. It had simply waited, patient, watchful, building something no one saw coming. The story of Vigilant One spread across systems like a spark through dry grass. One warship, unmanned by fleets, had stood alone, not to attack, not to conquer, to warn. The Calrec Dominion, once feared for its endless advance, had pulled back from dozens of systems. Border colonies revolted. Small worlds broke free. With no more war fleet to threaten them, the Calrec grip collapsed. Their defeat had not only shaken their own empire, it had unlocked others. Hope returned to places where fear had lived too long, and every one of those free worlds looked toward Earth, not as a savior, but as a guardian. In the Galactic Council chambers, the ambassador from a distant moon stood up and asked the question everyone was thinking. If Earth could build one ship like that, how many more do they have? No one answered. No one knew. That was the genius of Earth's strategy. They had shown just enough power to prove a point, but kept the truth hidden beneath the surface. No invasion. No broadcasts of superiority. No public display of dominance. Just one ship, one action, and one line drawn. That silence spoke louder than any war cry. Back on Earth, things remained steady. The planet didn't boast about what happened. Instead, factories quietly doubled production. Satellite stations were updated. Civilian leaders met with military tacticians in deep underground rooms. The people of Earth weren't seeking to lead the galaxy. They were preparing to protect it. Because humanity knew what others forgot. Peace wasn't something you hoped for. It was something you defended. And sometimes defending peace meant being the storm that kept war at bay. From the rim worlds to the central systems, messages were sent to Earth. Requests for alliances, trade routes, mutual protection pacts. Humanity didn't reply to all of them, only a few, the right ones. Because Earth understood something that most species were only now learning. True power doesn't come from how many enemies you defeat. It comes from how many wars you prevent. And so the galaxy changed. The Calrec Dominion became a shadow of its former self. The Galactic Council reformed its laws, now accounting for Earth's silent presence. And somewhere beyond Earth's orbit, Vigilant One patrolled the stars not to fight, but to remind the galaxy of the line that had been drawn. That line was simple. Do not bring war to Earth. Do not threaten the innocent. Do not mistake silence for weakness. Because now, the galaxy remembered Earth, and it would never forget again.